You pull open the mirror in the bathroom of an old house and find a small recessed cabinet. Dusty shelves. A few old bottles. It looks like nothing. But if that house was built before 1950, what you're looking at may be one of the most chemically complicated objects still standing in American domestic life. The cabinet itself could contain lead paint. The mirror backing may have used mercury. And the products once stored inside included things that are now controlled substances, banned compounds, or radioactive. One of them still is. The bathroom medicine cabinet was a modern invention, not in the ancient sense, in the genuinely exciting, catalog-advertised, this is what civilized people have sense. By the 1920s and 1930s, the recessed cabinet was a fixture of the aspirational American home. It fit neatly into the stud cavity behind the bathroom wall. It kept medicines organized and out of sight. It had a mirror, usually beveled, usually mounted on a simple nickel-plated hinge. It made the bathroom feel intentional, clean, up to date. In an era when domestic hygiene was being actively marketed as a moral and social achievement, the medicine cabinet was the physical proof that you took it seriously. Manufacturers ran full-page advertisements showing gleaming white bathrooms, with the cabinet as the centerpiece. Household management guides recommended it. Architects included it in standard bathroom layouts as a matter of course. Owning one meant you had a system. Your medications were not scattered across a windowsill or shoved under the sink. They were organized, accessible, and private. That was the promise. Small space, smart storage, modern home. The reality is that this small recessed box concentrated nearly every bad assumption of the pre-regulation era into one place, built it directly into the wall, and left it there for you to find 70 years later. Start with the cabinet itself, before you even open it. Pre-1950 interior paint was almost universally lead-based. That includes the paint on the inside surfaces of medicine cabinets, the shelves where bottles sat, the interior walls where your hands reached every morning. Lead paint in good condition is often described as manageable. Lead paint in a small enclosed space that gets opened and closed repeatedly, with slight humidity and temperature changes, is a different calculation. The flaking happens slowly. It happens onto the shelves. It happens onto the products stored there. It happens into the air of a room that is rarely well ventilated. And because this is a medicine cabinet, the things sitting on those shelves were things you put in your mouth, on your skin, and in your children's hands. The mirror is its own problem. Before modern manufacturing standardized aluminum and tin backing, pre-1950 mirrors commonly used mercury-based silvering processes. You can identify a deteriorating old mirror by the dark blotches and clouding that spread inward from the edges. That discoloration is the backing, breaking down. In an enclosed cabinet in a small bathroom, a degrading mercury-backed mirror produces mercury vapor. The concentration is low. The effect is not immediate. But chronic low-level mercury exposure in an enclosed, poorly ventilated space was not something the 1935 homeowner had any framework to think about. The mirror looked fine. It still looked fine. Those are not the same condition. And if the cabinet was recessed, which it almost always was, it was plastered and taped into a wall built with materials that, in many pre-1950 homes, include asbestos-containing joint compound, plaster, and insulation fill. The cabinet feels like a small project when you decide to remove it. Pull it out, patch the drywall, install something new. Contractors who work regularly in pre-1950 homes have learned to pause before that step. Opening that wall, disturbing that plaster, is often the moment a simple bathroom refresh becomes a conversation about abatement, testing, and a revised project budget. The cabinet was built to hold things safely. The cabinet itself had to be handled carefully. If this is making you look at your own old house differently, you're not wrong to. Now open it. Calomel was one of the most common medicines in the pre-1950 American home, mercurous chloride. It had been used in Western medicine for centuries as a laxative and purgative, and by the early 20th century, it was available without prescription, stocked in every pharmacy, listed in standard medical reference books, and recommended by physicians for a wide range of complaints in adults and children alike. It was also marketed specifically for infants. Teething powders containing calomel were sold as a reliable doctor-approved solution for a fussy, irritable, teething baby. They were cheap, widely available, and trusted completely. Calomel is a mercury compound. Repeated exposure to calomel, especially in very young children whose nervous systems were still developing, was later linked to a condition called acrodynia, which became known in households as pink disease. The symptoms were severe and specific: intense, burning pain in the hands and feet, skin that turned a deep pink and began to peel away, hair falling out in patches, profound sensitivity to light, profuse and unexplained sweating, muscle weakness, and neurological damage that in some cases was permanent. Pink disease was widespread for decades. It was genuinely mysterious to the physicians who documented it. Parents watched their children suffer without understanding why, and doctors recorded cases without being able to connect them. The link to calomel teething powders was not confirmed until the early 1950s. Before that confirmation, the product sat in medicine cabinets across the country, sold with complete confidence, given routinely to infants who could not describe what was happening to them. After the connection was established, calomel was withdrawn from teething products in the United Kingdom in 1954. The United States followed, but stock already in homes did not disappear on a regulatory deadline. It stayed on the shelf until someone used it or moved or died and left the house to someone else. Old sealed containers from this era still appear in inherited medicine chests, in estate clearouts, in the back shelves of houses that have not been updated in 2 or 3 generations. The rule is simple: do not open them. Do not assume an old sealed container is empty, inert, or safe because it is small and dusty and looks like nothing. It was the recommended remedy for a fussy baby. The recommendation was wrong. Calomel was not unusual in what it represented. The pre-1906 American medicine market was unregulated in the way that phrase sounds when you say it plainly and let it sit. There were no federal requirements for manufacturers to disclose active ingredients on product labels. A company could formulate a product containing morphine, print the words "soothing syrup and safe for infants" on the bottle, place it on pharmacy shelves next to the soap and the tooth powder, and face no legal obligation to tell anyone what was in it. Not the pharmacist, not the parent, not the child. Mrs. Winslow's soothing syrup is the name that gets cited most often in historical accounts of this era. It contained morphine sulfate. It was marketed specifically for infants and young children. It was one of dozens of similar products with different names and similar formulations. Paregoric, camphorated tincture of opium, was sold openly for colic and digestive complaints in children. Cocaine-containing preparations appeared in products marketed for throat complaints and energy. Various nerve tonics and cough cordials contained alcohol in concentrations that would raise immediate concerns if applied to a modern product. The Pure Food and Drug Act of 1906 required that products containing certain substances be labeled accordingly. The Harrison Narcotics Act of 1914 further restricted opiate distribution. Formulations changed. Some products disappeared, but old stock does not expire on the day a law passes. Sealed bottles from this era have been found in inherited homes and estate sales, still in their original packaging, the glass still clear, the labels still legible. They are now in legal terms controlled substance remnants. You cannot pour them down the drain. You cannot put them in the household trash. The label said it was for restless children. The ingredient list, had there been one, would have said something else entirely. But the strangest thing in the pre-1950 medicine cabinet, the one that takes a full moment to absorb, was not the mercury compound or the morphine syrup. It was the radium. Radium was discovered in 1898. By the 1910s and through the 1930s, radioactivity had acquired a cultural meaning that is genuinely difficult to reconstruct from where we sit now. Radiation was associated with energy, with vitality, with the body being stimulated into greater health. It was new science, and new science in that era often arrived wearing the language of progress and rejuvenation before the consequences had time to catch up. Radiation was not yet understood as a hazard. It was understood as a force. And forces, in the commercial logic of the early 20th century, could be bottled, packaged, and sold. Radium water crocks were ceramic vessels designed to leach radium into your drinking water overnight, so you could begin your morning with what was marketed as nature's own energy source, straight from the Earth's crust. Radium skin creams promised restored complexions and cellular renewal. Radium toothpaste, Doramad was the German brand, and similar products existed in the American market, claimed to invigorate the gums and produce a more vital, energetic mouth. These were not cheap novelty items. They were premium goods. They were the kind of product you kept in a quality cabinet and felt sophisticated about owning. Some of them came in elegant packaging with detailed scientific-sounding copy, explaining the benefits of radioactive therapy. Radium is a bone-seeking radioisotope. When it is ingested or absorbed through the skin repeatedly over time, it follows the body's calcium pathways directly into bone tissue, where it irradiates from the inside outward. The consequences documented in people with chronic radium exposure include radiation necrosis of the bone, particularly of the jaw, spontaneous bone fractures, bone cancer, and systemic radiation poisoning. The Radium Girls, factory workers in the 1920s, employed to paint luminous watch dials with radium-based paint, instructed by supervisors to point their brushes with their lips for precision, developed catastrophic bone deterioration, lost sections of their jaws, suffered radiation-induced cancers, and in many cases died from their exposures. Their cases were medically documented in precise detail. What happened to them documented exactly what the radium in consumer health products was capable of doing to the people who use those products every day. Radium has a half-life of approximately 1,600 years. A sealed glass jar of radium face cream sitting on a cabinet shelf since 1928 is not an antique, is an active radiation source. Estate sales, inherited medicine chests, and old pharmacy stock have been flagged by radiation safety authorities for exactly this reason. Handling an old sealed container without knowing what it contains is not a theoretical risk. It is a documented one. The sales pitch lasted about 20 years. The half-life is 1,600, and here is where the story changes character. Because the products, strange, alarming, historically disturbing as they are, could at least in principle be removed. Disposed of through the right channels, cleared from the shelves, dealt with. The cabinet itself could come off the wall, but the wall it came out of is still there. And in a pre-1950 home, the wall has its own problems, bigger problems, more expensive ones. The kind that do not get resolved with a phone call to a hazardous waste program. The word plumbing comes from plumbum, that is Latin for lead. The Romans built an entire infrastructure out of it, and for most of recorded history, that felt like a reasonable foundation. Lead was malleable, easy to shape, resistant to corrosion in ways that iron was not, and the pipes lasted for generations. When American homes were built in the early 20th century, lead supply pipes and lead solder joints were not a compromise. They were the standard. Architects specified them. Plumbers installed them. Building inspectors approved them. The pipe delivering water to the bathroom sink, directly below the medicine cabinet your family used every morning, was made of lead because that was how plumbing was done. Lead leaches into water. It does this more readily in soft water, in older pipes where the protective mineral scale has not built up, and in water that is slightly acidic, a description that applies to the municipal water supply in a significant number of American cities. The exposure is invisible. There is no taste, no odor, no discoloration. You turn on the tap, you fill a glass, you use that water to take the medicines from the cabinet above the sink, and nothing in the experience tells you anything is wrong. That invisibility is the specific character of the danger. It does not announce itself across decades. There is no established safe level of lead in blood. The neurological effects on developing children, reduced cognitive function, shortened attention, behavioral changes, developmental delays that persist into adulthood are extensively documented in the scientific literature. The cardiovascular effects in autists, including elevated blood pressure and increased risk of heart disease, are increasingly well understood. The exposure pathway running through the bathroom, tap into daily household routine, was operating in millions of homes for decades before lead service. Lines were banned in new residential construction in the United States in 1986. Homes built before that ban were grandfathered. The original pipes stayed in place. Many of them are still there. Testing is inexpensive. A basic lead water test is widely available and costs very little. Full pipe replacement. If the results come back elevated and the pipes run through the structure of the house, costs somewhere between $5,000 and $15,000, depending on the size of the home, the configuration of the plumbing, and what the contractor encounters when the walls open. The pipes worked exactly as designed. That was the problem. This is the kind of thing most people never think to check. If you found this useful, subscribing takes 2 seconds and keeps more of it coming. The wall around the medicine cabinet, the floor under your feet, the pipe insulation overhead. These are where the pre-1950 bathroom stored its most. Expensive long-term secret, not in the cabinet, in the room itself. Asbestos was not a suspicious material in 1930. It was considered an almost ideal building product for exactly the reasons that made practical sense at the time. It was fireproof. It resisted moisture. It was durable in ways that other insulating materials were not. And it was inexpensive enough to use broadly. The bathroom, specifically, was the room where all of those properties were most desirable. Bathrooms were wet. They were steamy. They had hot water pipes running through the walls and ceiling. They were adjacent to heating systems. Every argument for asbestos pointed toward the bathroom. Asbestos pipe wrap insulated the hot water pipes running through the wall cavity. Vinyl asbestos composite tiles covered the bathroom floors in millions of homes, a product that was considered an upgrade over older flooring because it was water resistant, easy to clean, and came in attractive patterns. Asbestos-containing joint compound was used to seal the wall seams. Asbestos was mixed into ceiling texture and applied to the same plaster walls where the medicine cabinet was recessed. It was not hidden. It was the material. It was doing its job exactly as intended. When asbestos is intact, well bonded, and left entirely undisturbed, the risk profile is different from disturbed asbestos. That distinction holds until the moment someone decides to renovate the bathroom. The bathroom is statistically one of the most frequently renovated rooms in any home. Tile gets replaced because it looks dated. Pipes get accessed for repairs or upgrades. Walls get opened for new fixtures or electrical work. The cabinet gets removed to install something more modern. Every one of those projects in a pre-1950 bathroom is a potential disturbance event for a material that releases microscopic fibers when it is cut, scraped, drilled, broken, or pulled apart. Those fibers do not clear from the lungs. They embed permanently in lung tissue, and the diseases they cause, asbestosis, lung cancer, develop over decades, often without symptoms until the damage is advanced. The renovation trap is that the disturbance frequently happens before anyone confirms what the eigend material is. A floor tile cracks during removal. A wall gets cut for a new outlet. The dust settles. The test happens afterward, and the conversation that follows is a different kind of conversation than the one that started the project. Professional asbestos abatement for a single bathroom, under controlled conditions with proper containment and disposal, typically starts around $1,500 to $3,000. If the material has already been disturbed, the cost escalates, the liability questions become more complicated, and the renovation timeline changes significantly. The tiles look dated. The problem underneath them was never about how they looked. The cabinet shelves and the cabinetry surrounding them added one more layer to the room: chemical inventory. Early synthetic materials, phenol formaldehyde resins like Bakelite and its variants, urea formaldehyde adhesives, used in early composite wood panels from the 1930s and 1940s, were genuinely aspirational in the pre-1950 interior. Synthetic meant modern. It meant you were not using old materials. Bakelite was molded, consistent, easy to clean, moisture-resistant, and available in colors. Composite panels made from urea formaldehyde adhesives were affordable and could be shaped in ways solid wood could not. The bathroom was one of the rooms where these new materials made the most obvious sense. Formaldehyde off-gases from these early synthetic resins, and it does so more aggressively in heat and humidity. The off-gassing rate increases as the material ages and the resin begins to break down. A bathroom is the room in the house with the most sustained heat, the highest humidity, and frequently the least ventilation. Often, a single small window or a mechanical exhaust fan that may not have existed in the original construction at all. Early composite cabinetry installed in 1940 and never replaced was off-gassing formaldehyde, a recognized respiratory irritant and classified carcinogen, into the most enclosed room in the house for decades. The modern material off-gassed into exactly the wrong room. Modern had limits nobody had run the numbers on yet. The family medicine cabinet was not only an adult medicine cabinet, children reached into it every day. The products kept there were used on children routinely without the regulatory scrutiny that developed later, and the consequences of that routine took years, sometimes decades, to surface clearly enough to change practice. Aspirin was the default fever and pain treatment for children through most of the 20th century. It was inexpensive, universally available, and considered entirely safe. The connection between aspirin use in children during viral illness and Reye's syndrome, a rare but potentially fatal condition causing acute liver failure and brain swelling, was the subject of growing scene concern through the late 1970s and early 1980s. The FDA added warning label requirements in 1986. Before that point, giving a child aspirin for a fever was not considered a mistake. It was the standard instruction from standard medical references. Pre-1950 homes that still have original aspirin stock on the cabinet shelf represent the physical tail end of that era of standard practice, preserved in place. Hexachlorophene was an antibacterial compound used in baby washes, powders, and soaps through the 1960s and into the early 1970s. It was widely marketed as gentle and effective for infant skin care. The FDA restricted its use significantly in 1972 after studies linked it to brain damage in premature infants who had been bathed with hexachlorophene-containing products. The stock already present in medicine cabinets did not disappear when the restriction took effect. Some of it was used up gradually. Some of it stayed, pushed to the back of the shelf, forgotten. Boric acid appeared in medicine cabinets as a mild antiseptic and eye wash solution and was commonly marketed for use with infants and young children. It is toxic if ingested in meaningful quantities and can be absorbed through broken or irritated skin. It was a routine household item. Considered mild, considered safe among family members, considered reasonable to keep within easy reach. The cabinet held what the era genuinely understood as care. The era was learning, continuously and often slowly, what care actually required. Which brings you to the specific and practical problem of the inherited house. You inherit a property or you find one priced well below the neighborhood because it has not been updated since the previous owner moved in during the Eisenhower administration. The bathroom is original. The hardware is original. The cabinet is original. And when you open it, the shelves are not empty. There are bottles. Some are sealed with their original caps, still tight. Some have labels printed in typefaces that feel like another world. Some have contents you can see through the glass. Some you cannot. The whole thing is dusty and smells faintly of something chemical that you cannot quite identify. What you are looking at may include old pharmaceuticals whose active ingredients are now controlled substances or banned compounds. It may include products containing mercury compounds or lead-based materials. It may include early synthetic preparations whose chemistry has never been fully characterized. In the specific and documentable case of radium-era health products, it may include materials that remain radioactive, not metaphorically, not historically, but physically today on that shelf. The interior surfaces of the cabinet may be actively flaking lead paint onto every object, stored there. What most people do in that moment is practical and understandable. They clear the shelves. They don't read every label carefully. They put the bottles in a bag and the bag in the trash and move on to the renovation. Some of those bottles have turned up at estate sales and antique markets, handled and opened, and appreciated as interesting old objects by people with no information about the original contents. Some have been displayed as decorative pieces. The aesthetic is appealing. The history inside the glass is not. The correct procedure is less convenient than a trash bag. Local hazardous waste disposal programs accept old pharmaceuticals and household chemical products and handle them through proper channels. The EPA and the Nuclear Regulatory Commission both maintain guidance for households that discover suspected radioactive materials. The standing rule for sealed containers of unknown origin from this era is not to open them, not to pour them, not to put them in the regular waste stream. What you have before you decide what to do with it. The house kept everything. Not everything was worth keeping without knowing what it was first. Here is the thing about a pre-1950 home, taken as a whole. It was not built carelessly. It was not built by people cutting corners or ignoring the evidence. It was built with confidence, with the best available materials. with products that came recommended by physicians and sold by established manufacturers and installed by tradespeople who understood exactly what they were doing within the knowledge available to them. Every lead pipe, every asbestos floor tile, every calomel teething powder, every radium water crock was a considered decision made by someone who had good reasons for it. The problem was not negligence. The problem was that the future held information the present did not yet have. That of medicine cabinet is. When you strip away the strangeness of the individual products and look at the object as a whole, it is not a horror story. It is a record of confidence. A small recessed box with a beveled mirror and original hardware built into a wall that has been standing since before most people alive today were born. It holds the specific moment when all of those decisions were still considered correct. Before the data accumulated, before the codes changed, before the contractors started pausing at the wall and reaching for their phones. The homes are still there. The cabinets, in millions of unrenovated bathrooms, are still there. The renovation assessments, the abatement conversations, the inherited bottles on the back shelf, the lead in the pipes below the sink, still there. The house was built to last. It did exactly that. It just brought everything along with it. The cabinet was supposed to hold the things that kept you healthy. Open it carefully. If this made you think about the house you're living in, good. Subscribe and we'll keep looking at what old homes are still hiding.